all the opposition finally see that they don't have a chance. Let's say Atiku is completely out, Obi is completely out. Maybe they will now be forced to now all unite.
Coalition.
Yes, and support one candidate, and there's only one other. Well, there are still a few other candidates.
But let me ask you though, Toba, do you foresee a coalition? Because a lot of people are talking about it and saying there might be. That's why we have all these internal crises here and there, and all of these unresolved issues, and this prolongment of this and that, and all of. Do you foresee one as a politician that you are, and of course you've weighed in all of this when it comes to political issues. You've watched and monitored electoral processes. Do you foresee one with the way things are going?
It's almost impossible. But if NDC is kicked off the ballot, if ADC is kicked off the ballot, they will all have to back Makinde, or just all lose and wait for another time to try again. Remember, Obi did an interview last week and said a young student asked him if he will contest in 2031. See, politicians are smart. It's we that really don't understand their language.
He's already putting something in people's mind. But then, we can't talk all this without talking about the electorate. You know, after the primaries,
yes,
there were a lot of complaints from almost all the parties. Wow, nothing happened here. I just saw candidates, and a lot of things. And there was a way that penetrated into the hearts of the electorates that we are still trying to talk to, making them believe that their votes count. Yes. We've recorded voter apathy, and at so many places, vote buying, and some will tell you, if we don't get this from them now, when they get there, we won't get to see anything anymore. Now, with all this drama, whether you like it or not, that you just talked about Peter Obi, this is a statement trying to penetrate the heart of the people indirectly. Mm-hmm. What do you think of the electorates, their belief and their thinking coming into 2027's election?
Yeah, let's first pick on INEC. I don't think INEC has done anything wrong. INEC is not the reason why all these candidates are who they are. Mm-hmm. And the INEC chairman wasn't the one there when Atiku contested since 1993. So these are people with their fixed mindsets and their fixed supporters who fluidly move once in a while to other support. The electorates are waiting for this political drama to end, so that they can fully know who they are with, who they are backing. Once at this point we are close to August and we still don't know who has scaled through litigation and is a sure candidate, it is not a good sign for the electorate. People are weary, people want to give support for a long time, but they still don't know who to support right now. The faster this litigation phase ends, and we finally know the true candidates that will be on the ballot, the better for the people to be able to prepare.
Talking about the electorate now, what's your take on the interference of INEC and of course the INEC chairman Joshua Amupito when it comes to interfering in political parties, talking about their conventions, committee and all of that? What's your take on that basically?
Truly, people are looking for how to give a dog a bad name. I've truly not seen him do anything that stands out far from it. The only thing I've seen, which doesn't have to do with this election but 2031, is the fact that there's a party called CDA. The court has given a judgment that the party should be registered, and INEC has not met with the court. INEC is saying they are waiting for true certified copy. It's 2 weeks and no true certified copy has left the court to INEC. So those are the issues that are on ground for me. Those are kind of delays that I see INEC doing are my only worries. But any other thing, I can't really fault INEC.
People keep saying that the INEC chairman, Joshua Amupito, a lot has been said about him not being competent enough, about him not being the right man for the job when it comes to 2027 election and all of that. What's your take when it comes to the INEC chairman? Do you think he has what it takes in order to conduct this particular election free and fair, transparency, credibility and all of that encompass?
He's been in the system for a while. Yes, he's a Yoruba man from Kogi State. So that leaves some amount of Yoruba man. Mm-hmm. But the play in region worked very well. No INEC chairman has ever emerged from the North Central. Since our democracy started, we've not had one INEC chairman from the North Central. So if one emerges, what do you have to say about that when every other place has had? So I think that favored the Tinubu narrative, and that also made people not like him ab initio. I believe if it was from another tribe, they would have had less problem with it. So, but we cannot make things tribal at this point. They should allow him do his work. There's no election in which, like I said, the Ekiti election, I have not even seen them. I didn't see anybody appeal the election. So, if it was not appealed, is he the one to go and appeal?
No.
For you? So, I told you that last 2 weeks, Saturday, every single position in Benin was won by APC, and no other person really even contested it. So what is the role of the INEC chairman in that? I think they should leave him alone and wait for the election.
All right. Thank you very much, Toba, for joining us on the conversation today. Left for me, we would have continued, but then our time is up.
Thank you.
A very big thank you for joining us. We hope to have you again for more conversations. All right, everyone, this is the size of the first conversation for you. We'll go into the second conversation, and that will be after this break. Stay with us.
In an age of breaking news, you need a trusted source that prioritizes accurate, factual, and unbiased.
Everyone, it's a delight to have you still there at the other side. This is Global Morning, and the second conversation is coming on your way right now. Yes, let's look at leadership support. Like some persons will say, when you have good people around you, you seem to do better than others. I underline the word good people. All right. So today we'll be looking at, of course, leadership support. Every leader needs a support, but it depends on the people who are rendering this support. We want to look at how transparency, ethics, and accountability can be promoted, can be enhanced in governance. And today, we have one of the most active senior special advisor to the Senate President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria with us as we look at this very awesome topic in the person of Dr. Justin Nwankwo. It's good to have you join us on the program this morning.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Justice, for being here.
Thank you.
All right. When we talk about leadership support, a lot of people, I don't know, even the councillors have it too. I've seen governors create departments, and they have a special advisor on maybe beautification, special advisor on this and that. And of course, a lot of people feel the senior special advisors, all right, are supposed to give support and make leadership more juicy. Do you have a contrary opinion?
Well, thank you, our viewers. When we define leadership, it is always very important to clear what we call the Augean table. That means to dot the I's and cross the T's. There is no leader that is an Ireland. And therefore, for every definition of leader or leadership, as it were, it encompasses in itself what we call and a movement, a following. Because if you're a leader and there's nobody following you, or no people following you, then you're not a leader. Leadership presupposes followership. And it is in the content of the followership that you now get these things you have now defined, either as appointments, special assistants, special advisors, legal advisors, secretaries, and so many other layers, which in themselves helps the leader to perform optimally. Just like every system, even if it is a machine, even if it is anything that has to do robotic, aquatic, anything, you must have to have what we call component parts for it to function, even the human body. When we describe it in a sense, you discover that it is over multi-million layers, cells of function. So also is leadership. So when you see a leader getting helping hand from so many other of those who he appoints, you now see the reason why he wants to make sure that he is in touch with reality. The most fundamental problem with leadership is to lose touch with reality. Please take note. The moment you lose touch with reality, you become what the proverbial Igbo people will say, that means the king that nobody tells or advises. And now people end up by saying that such a king will carry shit at the back of his clothes without knowing, because nobody tells him, who dare you? And in a manner, when you have appointed advisors, when you have appointed assistants, wherein your eyes cannot reach, theirs can reach. What becomes important, as Obasanjo defined it during his time as president of the country, is now to do what you may call coordinating. It is in the roots of Obasanjo that you get what you call coordinating minister of finance. In essence, he was only trying to portray the capacity of those he has given appointments and his ability to now sit, as they say, to look at their reports. And even as it is today, even in FEC, Federal Executive Council, you must have to give out this appointment, ministerial, special and so on, come down to the government level, come down even to the Senate President level, come down to even to local government chairman. You must have to be, especially when you are occupying an executive position. That word executive implies a lot. When you know, even the Senate President as a legislator still requires help, but some of us are not special advice. We are senior legislative aides. I want us to correct that, please, going forward. Senior legislative aid, because we are in the legislature, our own terminology becomes legislative aids. In some other circumstances where it is in the executive, you now get a senior special assistant, senior special advisors. But under the guidance of the National Assembly, what you get is senior legislative aid, legislative assistant, secretary, personal assistant. This is the statutory 5 positions that every senator must have to function optimally, paid and recognized by the Constitution. So it's not an arbitrary appointment. Every senator requires these 5 positions. At the level of leadership, the Senate leader, the Senate president, deputy, some of them could have more than 5 by virtue of the overriding effect of their function. So these are the things that we have to know, and it is critical to a leader, because you may not be everywhere. And if you want to produce results, you now need to rely on these appointments, which, like I said earlier before, requires competence, professionalism, and a sense of dedication to those you are going to appoint. The next challenge becomes, do you appoint them on what I call kit and kin basis? Do you appoint them merely to occupy offices and acquire some funds or retirement? Those ones, if your questions move in that direction, we'll throw light.
No, let me bring that question. Let's ask that question now. Let me ask that question now. Because I actually wanted to ask that question because it should be a follow-up to what you have just explained. Because we're talking about governance here. And if the boss fails, it means those working with him or her have also failed. Do we have, all right, senators, because, or legislators, let me use that word now, let's be official now. Do we have legislators who just have these people, because you said must be professional, must be intelligent and all of that. Do we have legislators who only have these people? Is it possible for some legislators to only have these people, but then not taking the necessary advice or suggestion, as the case may be, from them? And what is the implication?
Of course, this is the human society. Ours is not different. You know, like I used to say, cuculus non facit monachum. The hood does not make a monk. Not when you wear a red cap and then a good, nice sewn cloth, you become a high chief. And neither is when you wear a good suit and you become a corporate banker. Neither do you wear a very long abada and you become a good senator. Neither do you wear a very good cloak and white gown, you become a very good monk or pastor. Therefore, there is a saying there established that cuculus non facit monachum. Now, who does not make a monk? Neither does this appointment make a good senator, neither does it make a bad one. What is important is the personality of the individual who is occupying the legislative position at the time. I can tell you that legislative aides, we formed a forum, Association of Legislative Aides at the National Assembly. We had one international conference sometime towards the ending of last year. What is the bone of contention? The bone of contention is to continue to push for elected legislatures to take seriously these appointments that have been given to them in the wisdom of the law, to take the advice, the professional input, the research inputs of those who indeed are called their legislative assistants. In most occasions, you could see these appointments. Some of those who do them may not even be in Abuja. Some of them are given, like I was trying to say, as more of what you may call a gratuitous appointment. Some of them, of course, when they arrive here, could also get some those who have been in the National Assembly for a long time to do these jobs for them because they live in Abuja. They're not bringing in any extra cost of bringing somebody from, assuming I'm coming from Anambra, and somebody feels like an associate professor in philosophy that I could make impact, but you may need to relocate me and give me a good accommodation so that I can now do a lot of. He looks at it and says, well, I cannot move Dr. Justin from Anambra. I would rather see and outsource the keyword. I will now give Justin this appointment, but I will outsource the basic, what you may call help and research and other things in and within Abuja here, those who live in Abuja here. That one happens. You also see a situation where these legislators, some of them, they have these people, they advise them. But you know, in this level of government, to advise is one thing, for your advice to be taken is another thing. So some legislators, I must say, do not completely rely on the advice, on the aid, as they are called, and on the recommendations of their assistants, advisors, or as it may be. That you are called a special advisor to the president on television does not mean that at every time you give him the report, he will accept. You only offer it at the table, like they say. You can only advise the king. If they tell you to carry the king, you will refuse because you have no authority to do that. So we have occasions where some of these appointments at the leadership level are not even, so to say, not obeyed, but those advices are more or less like what you may call a book activity. They are not taken seriously. The leaders tend to have what you call an inner cabal, who themselves may not even hold an appointment. A friend to the governor, a friend to the president, a friend to a legislator could even be more impactful in terms of talking to him and advising him than those who he has appointed for that function. So sometimes these appointments at the leadership level are to fulfill all righteousness, to fulfill all statutory demands. If a senator must have 5 legislative assistants from senior legislative aide, assistant, secretary, and PA, he is bound to have it. He must have to submit 5 names to that effect. Submitting them does not imply that at all times he could also, as well, rely on some other persons he may pay or he may have acquired in the course of his professional job to properly advise him. So there are what we may call, if not abuses, but some signs of neglect, and that is why the legislative aides are forming themselves. Even you can get association of, I have a friend of mine who did what we call association of former political appointees. One of my friends runs a system in Anambra he calls a union of former political appointees. The essence is to continue to gather the quality they have, unify themselves, and form a political voice. Wherein their advice or their opinions are not heard, they could as well do communiques and publish for the people to know their position paper on certain developments in government. So these are the issues.
So for me, how important is transparency, credibility when it comes to leadership support, and of course when you give all of these professionalism to these government officials? How important is it?
You cannot underestimate, neither can you over-elaborate the importance of accountability and transparency. Of course, if you watch the World Bank and if you watch all these international organizations, the index are clear. You have Transparency International, you have even in Nigeria here, ICPC was set up, EFCC was set up, Code of Conduct Bureau was set up, and multiple layers of government agencies were set up only for one thing, to drive accountability and transparency in government. Of course, if you look at Nigeria, me myself being part of what I may call the current government today, we cannot, the fish that is inside the water cannot deny that it has a relationship with the water. For the fish to say, I have nothing to do with the water, meanwhile, you know your life depends on water, is a lie. So I cannot deny that the bane of misgovernance in Nigeria is lack of accountability and transparency. It continues to be what you may call the Achilles heel of government in Nigeria. I was reading a work written by Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore. When Malaysia, of course, knowing Singapore was more or less like a bay, just surrounded by water, meanwhile quite attached to the Malaysian government in the past, as at 1960s. If you look at when Malaysia freed them, thinking that they were going to die, one of the basic things that the leader of Singapore, the father of the modern Singapore did, which is Lee Kuan Yew, was to lay the prolegomena, you call it the desiderata, to lay the foundation for anybody who is caught. That's why I have positioned myself as a philosopher and now a politician over the years to talk about the benevolent dictator. I appreciate that concept because that's what Lee Kuan Yew was able to establish in Singapore. What did he do? He established the fact that anybody in government who is found wanting in accountability and in transparency in any transaction, including these appointments, because in accountability and transparency, you are looking at so many things. You are looking at processes. You know, when we say accountability, it just appears that he embezzled money, he took money from... No. Every system of government goes through a process. If they are going to appoint me as a senior legislative aide to the President of the Senate, it has to go through a process, which means, what is my qualification for this? Have I gone for an interview, which is the case? You go to the National Assembly board, you'll be interviewed, an appointment paper will be issued, you go for documentation, you get to, before you get to those in finance, and a lot of them, and then you ensure that even if you are receiving any salary, that these things are coming in tandem with the regulatory conditions. Even in appointments, in financial transactions, and even in code of conduct, these are all part of what you see in the broader understanding of accountability and transparency. So you cannot just come and unilaterally declare that this person is this. He also is earning from government coffers, but there is no evidence of an appointment letter. There is no evidence of an interview. There is no evidence of documentation. Very, very important. So when you talk about transparency and accountability in leadership, it is the brain. Let's establish it as a fact for the level of corruption and the failure of leadership that is in this country today. If we don't fail, especially in the leadership position, these things are there. Take note that these things are in the law. The Constitution provides for them. Code of Conduct Bureau provides for them. EFCC bylaw provides for them, ICPC bylaw provides for them. All of these things are there. Everybody understands that you cannot issue a contract here in Nigeria without going through the normal process. But at the end of the day, those who take leadership position and take oath of office to pledge allegiance to the republic still go ahead and find ways to cheat the system. Yeah, that becomes a problem. So when we talk about transparency, it must have to be clear, just like what currently is going on in the saga between this man that has been given an appointment according to him, and what the federal government is saying that they don't recognize him.
Fake agent.
These are the issues. These issues in a proper context, transparency and accountability should have shown us where is this man placed. It's not a matter of dragging him from there or him himself. In the record should be clear. The record should be clear on a transparent level. Was this man appointed? Check the record. If the record is not there, it's not there. You can't manufacture it. If he's not appointed, he's not appointed. If he's appointed, he's appointed. Accountability. Funds that have been budgeted and appropriated as he was claiming. You know, when you look at all these things, you see that within the context of Nigerian leadership, even though we also are now at the corridor, serving as it were to the leaders, but we also acknowledge as young people that the real issue is transparency. How do you bring in people to office? How do people who have been entrusted to this office, how are they accountable to the people? How do they let people know what they are doing with public funds? If you say you are borrowing, how are you borrowing from where to where? How do we even access what we may call database? How do we, on a click of the modern era, as it were, get information of what is happening in government? Why is everything more or less like OPEC? So these are the developments that you people in the media must continue to push. And some of us who are aspiring for leadership positions, and who have attained one, must continue to say the truth. Because it is in saying the truth that the gods, who also we pray for when we say, when the gods bless Nigeria. And we'll also know that we are sincere. You know, our people have what to say, that means somebody is making effort, but his chi, that is his God, he refuse. You have been trying, you've been pushing, you've been working hard, but it appears that there is a conglomeration of your village people who are knocking their head on the ground saying you must not succeed. You must not succeed. The only way to succeed is to tell your God the truth. Tell them, my hands are clear, my hands are clean. So the leadership position in Nigeria must approach what we may call to go to equity. Your hands must have to be clean. Transparency, accountability is not only financial. It is also procedural.
Okay.
You must have to follow it by the procedures. You must have to play by the book, including in appointments, in executing of contract, even in awarding them, and multiple things that require that leaders are sincere, so that those who are coming after them, like I mentioned Singapore, just that the minister during the reign of Lee Kuan Yew appropriated or demanded $1,000 from a multinational company that was coming from America. I think that was Toyota trying to establish a request. $1,000. The movement of the country and the establishment that moved against him, he swallowed the pill and died. Because he was not going to face the public economy. So we must have to, that's why I've advocated for some sense of a benevolent dictator. That means a democratic elected president, but who also has a kind of fist, an iron fist, to push things. Sometimes democracy is a problem. We are practicing it, but it's a problem because a lot of give and takes. If it were, like I used to say, when the khaki boys were, if they had been serious about setting the standards before the transit into democracy, there is a lot of things that will not be happening now. But it has now become the business of everybody every day to enjoy what comes to his table. So nobody wants to care. Nobody wants to account.
Just 1 minute. Follow that question. I'm coming. Hold on for a minute. You just talked about the check and balance thing now.
Yes.
So now you are there. I'm so happy that you said you're part of the system. What is your assessment of the check and balance between the executive, legislature, and the judiciary with this current administration?
Well, the truth of the matter is that, like I said before, there is what we may call a sense of calm. Some Nigerians tend to use another vocabulary, but I use calm. You can choose to use another. Some others say is a rubber stamp. You know, when you are calm, even as a presenter in these people, somebody will say you're a rubber stamp, interviewer or anchor, because you're not fighting me. You're not asking me to remove my red cap and my glasses. And then you now look at it to say you're not rubber stamp. Or you are. But even in calmness, typical of the tigers, they still has what we call stealth. You see, between the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, under President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, I can say that because of President Bola Tinubu's what you may call I don't know what I call it overcapacity, because of the nature of his years of participating in politics. Please pay attention. Because of his years of participation in politics and having played this political game as a chess over the time, he tends to understand broadly the language of politics. Because you give a man chairman of a party, either at the state level or you give a man to be chairman of the global television. If a man is not experienced in this field, the next day he's having problem with the anchors, he's having problem with the recorders, he's trying to show everybody I'm the boss, I sack you, you move. At the end of the day, people say, he's having problem with this, but it is proper lack of management. He doesn't understand the essence of lobby, essence of personality management, human management, even spiritual management, because to be able to be in charge, you must have to give and take. I again say, like our people say, I'm trying to use these idioms to illustrate that Nadike Edihar, that means in Igbo language, if a strong man does not sober, if a strong man does not sober in a quiet period only by himself, only he will live by himself. It implies that for every strong man, there must have been something that you are not comfortable, but you let it go so that people can do it. If you execute your strong nature all around, you don't have a level. You don't have a level, because by the time everybody wants to come and live around, people say, this one will kill us. Let's go and live across the river. But when you decide that somebody who is even poor is going to live around your mansion, there's no problem, you can come out and see that their debt is on the road, no problem, please try managing people. So what I'm saying in essence is that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a strong politician and a strong leader, tested over the years. Now, what you are seeing in the relationship between the executive, the legislatures, and the judiciary is a product of that strong leadership, which is defined by his capacity to at each time recognize what each of these arms of government or institutions need. If they need lobby, he goes for lobby. He has a team of everything. People don't understand the way he operates. I'm not typical part of his inner government, but working from the legislature and National Assembly, we can be able to oversee how he handles the National Assembly issues. You discover that at every time, just like when there was a case with Natasha, and you see how the executive is able to stay off. You also see how they continue to probe, continue to invite. Typically, in most other areas, the executive may even want to dabble into it and see how the current National Assembly will enter into chaos. But they stay away, continue setting up committees, continue trying to ensure that there is stability at the National Assembly. Now, if there is a crisis in the National Assembly, which the National Assembly themselves cannot resolve, because for every system you have what you call an implosion. Just like when we have the mercantiles, you have communism, capitalism, neoliberalism in economic theories. At some point we said capitalism will implode in itself. So every system implodes in itself. And when it does, it requires an external help. There's something that will happen to me today, I cannot resolve. Even prayers, I require a pastor to pray for me. Even medical, I require a doctor to look at me. So also at the National Assembly, there are some issues that may come up. It will not be above the National Assembly requiring the executive to intervene. Not intervening in any way, but to look up to them and say, how is this arm of government getting weak? How do we help you to get yourself stable so that you can make stable laws and help the executive in the interrelationship? This is where President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is very strong, and we must have to be sincere. Had it been not for his strong leadership skills, you could see more issues at the National Assembly, knowing fully well that so many agitations are there. Nigerians who are hungry, Nigerians who are, at the end of the day, these people who are senators and House of Rep members are the immediate representatives of the people. So they are the first point of attack. They are the first point of attack. If I'm hungry and I cannot eat, I will go to the house of my rep in Orumba North and South and stay at his gate. I may not be able to see the president, but I know his house. I will stay there until he finds something. So when you look at it very well, you see that the executive must also work with them. They look at the judiciary. A lot of people say they are building houses for them and so on. They are not going to live in the bush, because the basic salary, I know my basic salary, even when I was a senior lecturer transmitting myself to an associate professor in the university. Now, even at the National Assembly, these are not basics that can do much for anybody. You can only use it to stabilize yourself. And then you are praying to God that someday you could also see opportunities that warrant government schemes and government loans. So some of these judges, when you see them, they say they are building houses for them, they are buying them. If you leave them with the salaries they are getting, they may not be able to build a 5-bedroom duplex for themselves. So government, which is the standard everywhere in the world, must have to do these buildings. They take it and they now pay little by little. These are house schemes. So I want to say that the credit must go to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for ensuring that there is what we call a leadership skill set. One of the most important things we must have to note is that, look at his appointments. He places square pegs in square holes. That's very important. And that's the beginning of the failure of leaders. When you see the CBN governor Oscar Cardozo, you look at his history with him at Lagos. You look at all his impression about his record. At the end of the day, whether he can be judged by what is happening with the CBN today or not, what is important is that a core banker, a financial economist is there at the seat. Let's now say it is neither here nor there, or that this policy, because if you watch the American president, he has 2 advisors in every contending issue. And I think also some leaders appropriate it. What is your view about this television? This other person must give a varying one. Why this other person? So that at the end of the day, the leader is faced with 2 advice, he must have to take one. You know, you don't just come and bring one parallel advisor who continues to advise in one direction. So what I'm saying is that what you asked, the harmonious relationships, may not be the question of accountability and transparency. It is a product of a politician, a leader who knows what it means to lobby and give and take, and who understands governance as an inclusive activity.
All right, now, because of our time, quickly now, can you just talk a bit on loopholes and, of course, mistakes? I know when you give leadership support, you're not perfect, you're human. So what are the sanctions or penalties attached to all of that?
In terms of...
when it comes to mistakes and there are loopholes, you give an advice that it doesn't sit well, or it's in tandem to what it's portrayed about the individual in the society.
Of course, if it is at the level of my appointment, if I'm a legislative aide, senior at that, and I put up a research document which intermittently or by virtue of any other circumstance backfires, or it turns out that I have said that Global Television is in Palm Hotel, 4th floor, meanwhile it is in 1st floor. It becomes a problem because fundamentally you have offered to the leader research material or an advisory intent that is misleading. The consequences are much. In allowing such a person to continue, you are also discrediting the government. So most of the times, when an advisor or an aide errs on the part of professionalism, some leaders could as well correct, some others could as well. That's why you see some ministers. That's why you see they tell you that this minister is not performing. They are sacked. This is not the first time we are getting ministers sacked, even commissioners sacked in the state, especially advisors are sacked. There is also what they call sometimes, what you may call a routine overhaul. That is at the level of appointees. But even at the level of the leaders themselves, there is always a check and balance. For every 4 years, there's an opportunity for the people. What is the essence of election? If you study election, define election, contextualize election, extrapolate election, the only key fundament of an election is to review the result of what a leader has done in 4 years, in 5 years, in 3 years, depending on what the tenor is. And it is in that moment and time that the people must now be able to say you did well or you did not do well. Of course, there are other check and balances in the system, but some of the executives enjoy immunity. You may not be able to do much of them because of the immunity. But some of the ministerial positions and some other positions, if they are found wanting and the public, learned public, because that's another problem. Our people also must be able to be trained in what you call democratic tenets. You approach a court and say, this minister, this senator is not doing well. Here, you put up a report. If the investigative panel is moving, at the end of the day, such a minister could find himself. In fact, look at what has been happening in Britain. For the past over 2-3 years now, Britain has had, if not less than 4 prime ministers. And these things are, when people raise this alarm, they resign. But here, our people are not willing to resign. So people are not willing to resign.
Our time is up. But then, in just 1 minute, all right, because you said something very vital, as it has to do with who becomes an aide and all of that, and what the people should do. Finally, before you go, you've been doing a great job, even in your state and even with the Senate president, very active senior legislative aide. Now, what is your advice, all right, for people who are just sitting there and not doing anything as aides? Because some people are waiting to be asked, do this before they do it. What's the implication?
The axe is at the base of the tree.
Bible.
The axe is at the base of the tree, and therefore, any tree which does not bear fruit will be cut down.
That's right.
Invariably, they say in Hosea 5, for his office, let another take. So if a man or a woman is appointed for a position, especially at this assistant, advisorial, and aide position, and you don't know what you are doing, the onus lies on the leader. This is also part of the bad leadership. The onus lies on the leader to remove such a person. Because such a person will refuse to remove himself. Like I was trying to say, because he's in Nigeria, he will refuse to remove himself. The onus lies on the leader to remove the person. When you are redundant, when you are inactive, when you are not functioning in a system, you have to go. The only issue is that, like I said, some of these things are also on a kit and kin basis, or more or less than gratuitous. So you could give it to somebody who is not doing much, and they say, allow him. It is the turn of the Osun East Senatorial side to have it. So it's only occupying it by virtue of it is their turn. Not necessarily that they have something to offer.
Well, I wish we have time. This is getting very interesting, but then we don't have all the time. Thank you very much, Chief Dr. Justin Nwankwo, Senior Legislative Aide to the Senate President, Godswill Akpabio. Thank you very much for joining us on the program today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, everyone. There are things to talk about, but because of our time, we won't be able to go into all of that. Many thanks for joining us on the program today. Well, in fact, the opinion of our viewers is entirely theirs and not that of Global Television, the newspaper houses. Global Television does not have contribution to the editorials. My name is Ramsey Enoch Agbo. Many thanks for joining us.
And I am Jumai Manson. Thank you all so much for being a part of the program. And to our guests, thank you for being a part of the program once again. Have an amazing day ahead. Bye-bye.
Pleasure.